Hey guys, tonight we slip into the quiet rhythm of an Edo Period Samurai Wife's daily life, where every moment hums with purpose and poise. Picture this. It's 17th century Japan, and you're stirring awake in a tatami matted room, the air cool with dawn's first breath. Sliding paper screens glow faintly orange, and outside, a rooster crows like it's auditioning for the shogun's court. You're not just any woman, you're married to a samurai, a man whose sword is his honor, and your role is the backbone of his household. Fair warning, one misstep in this tightly choreographed world, and you probably won't survive the gossip at the local bathhouse. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink awake, the futon beneath you firm but cozy, its cotton stuffing molded to your shape after years of use. The room smells faintly of cedar and rice straw, a grounding scent that pulls you into the day. Your husband, Taro, is already gone, probably off practicing sword forms or bowing to his lord at the castle. As a samurai wife, your morning sets the tone for the entire household, and there's no snooze button in 1650s Edo. You rise, fold your bedding with the precision of a calligraphy stroke, and tuck it into a lacquered chest. Every action matters here. A sloppy fold could signal a disorganized mind, and in a society obsessed with harmony, that's a scandal waiting to happen. Let's get real. Mornings in Edo, Japan aren't exactly a Starbucks run. Historical records show samurai households followed strict routines, with wives overseeing everything from meals to morals. You're not just a homemaker, you're the CEO of a tiny kimono-clad empire. Your first task is splashing cold water on your face from a wooden basin. No indoor plumbing, of course. Water's hauled from a well by a servant girl who's already muttering about her sore arms. You pat your skin dry with a hemp cloth, then reach for a curious little jar. Here's the quirky bit. Some samurai wives used nightingale droppings as a face mask, believing it brightened their complexion. Yes, bird poop. It's ground into powder, mixed with water, and smoothed on like an artisanal spa treatment. Does it work? Historians still argue whether it was genius skincare or just placebo vibes, but you're game to try it, right? You rinse off the mask, feeling faintly smug about your glow, and turn to your hair. It's long, jet black, and needs to be tamed into an elegant updo. You sit before a small bronze mirror, combing with a wooden tsuge comb, each tooth polished to glide without snagging. The process takes time. Think 20 minutes of mindful brushing, like an ASMR session nobody asked for. A dab of camellia oil adds shine, and you twist your hair into a chignon, securing it with a lacquered pin shaped like a plum blossom. Why so much effort? Because your appearance reflects your husband's status. Show up with a messy bun, and it's like Taro forgot how to swing his katana. Joke's on you, though, those pins are heavy, and by noon your scalp's begging for mercy. Before you leave the room, you kneel at a small alcove where a scroll hangs, painted with a crane for longevity. You light a stick of sandalwood incense, the smoke curling like a sleepy cat. This is your moment of calm, a breath before the day's demands pile up. You're not just waking up, you're stepping into a role that balances grace, grit, and the occasional bird-dropping facial. The household is stirring now, servants clatter in the kitchen, and your kids are probably arguing over who gets the bigger rice ball. Time to move. You slide open the shoji screen, the wooden frame whispering against its track, and step into the corridor, ready to orchestrate the morning. You glide down the corridor, the wooden floor cool beneath your tabi socks, each step a soft patter on polished cedar. The house hums with early morning life. Servants shuffle, a kettle whistles faintly, and somewhere, a sparrow chirps like it's late for a meeting. Your mission now is to transform from a sleepy samurai wife into a vision of Edo-era elegance. Dressing in this world isn't just throwing on a hoodie, It's a ritual, a performance of identity where every fold and knot speaks volumes about your status. You're about to wrestle with layers of silk and cotton, and trust me, it's less glamorous than it sounds. You enter a small room where your wardrobe awaits, stored in a paulownia wood chest that smells faintly of camphor to keep moths at bay. Historical accounts, like those from the Tokugawa period, describe samurai wives wearing kosode, narrow-sleeved robes, as their base layer, topped with uchikake or other outer garments for formal occasions. You start with a hadajuban, a lightweight cotton undergarment that clings softly to your skin. It's your Edo equivalent of a tank top, but tying it feels like solving a puzzle designed by a grumpy monk. Next comes the kosode, a silk robe dyed in muted indigo, its hem brushing your ankles. The fabric is smooth but heavy, and you're already wondering how you'll survive summer in this getup. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives tucked love poems into their obi sashes, hidden against their waist for luck or romance. You slip a tiny scrap of paper into your own sash, a line from a poem you wrote for Taro years ago. Something about cherry blossoms and his stubborn heart. It's a secret only you know, a flicker of mischief in an otherwise rigid routine. Historians still argue whether these poems were common or just aristocratic flair, but you like to think every wife had her little rebellion tucked somewhere. Now, the obi. This wide, stiff sash is the boss battle of your morning. It's brocade, woven with silver threads in a crane pattern, and tying it requires the dexterity of a kendo master. You wrap it twice around your waist, folding it into precise pleats, then knot it at the back in a taiko musubi, a boxy bow that screams, "I'm important but not flashy." The whole process takes 15 minutes, and your arms ache like you've been hauling rice sacks. A servant girl, Hana, hovers nearby, offering to help, but you wave her off. Independence matters. Plus, Hana's still mastering her own knots, and you don't need a lopsided bow ruining your vibe. You glance at the bronze mirror, checking your silhouette. The layers add bulk, but they're meant to. Slender figures were less admired than a stately, composed presence. Your hair, still pinned from earlier, holds firm, though one rebellious strand tickles your neck. You tuck it back, muttering about how modern hairpins would be a game changer. Joke number one. If time travel existed, you'd smuggle a pack of bobby pins and become the shogun of convenience. The mirror reflects a woman who's poised but human, someone who's already mentally juggling the day's tasks while looking like she just stepped out of a ukiyo-e print. Before you leave, you adjust the obi one last time, ensuring the cranes align perfectly. Presentation isn't vanity, it's strategy. A samurai's wife is judged by her household's order, and your appearance is the first line of defense against nosy neighbors or your mother-in-law's side-eye. Speaking of which, you hear her voice drifting from the kitchen, probably critiquing the miso soup's saltiness. Joke 2, if you survive her daily inspections, you deserve a medal, or at least a second bowl of rice. You take a deep breath, the silk rustling softly, and step toward the kitchen, ready to face the morning's next challenge. The weight of the kimono settles on your shoulders, a reminder that elegance comes with effort, but you're already planning a sneaky nap later. You step into the kitchen, where the air carries the nutty warmth of steaming rice and the faint tang of miso. The room is a quiet hive of activity. A clay stove glows, wooden spoons clatter, and Hana, the servant girl, stirs a pot with the focus of a Zen monk. Morning light filters through a bamboo screen, casting striped shadows on the tatami floor. As a samurai wife, breakfast isn't just a meal. It's a statement of order, a silent promise that your household runs like a well-timed kabuki play. You're here to oversee, taste, and serve, all while keeping the peace in a room full of hungry egos. You kneel at a low table, its lacquered surface polished to a mirror sheen. Historical records from the Edo period note that samurai families ate simple but deliberate meals, often rice, miso soup, pickled vegetables, and a small protein like grilled fish. You check the spread: a pot of fluffy rice, a bowl of miso with floating tofu cubes, and a plate of pickled radish sliced thin as paper. The fish, mackerel today, its skin crisp from the fire, sits on a ceramic dish painted with plum blossoms. You nod to Hana, who scurries to fetch the tea, a green sencha that smells like fresh cut grass. Here's the quirky bit. Some samurai wives added a pinch of ground cherry pits to the miso for extra depth, a trick passed down from rural grandmothers. You sprinkle a tiny amount into the soup, stirring it with a bamboo ladle. It's subtle, earthy, and probably safe, though historians still argue whether it was flavor genius or a mild poison roulette. You're not worried. Your mother-in-law's been eating it for decades and still has the energy to critique your every move. Speaking of her, she's seated at the table, eyeing the mackerel like it personally offended her. You serve her first, sliding a bowl of rice across with a polite bow. She grunts approval, which is as close to a compliment as you'll get. Your two kids, Kenji and Aiko, tumble in, their hair still mussed from sleep. Kenji, 8, is already bragging about his kendo stance, while Aiko, 5, clutches a straw doll and demands extra pickles. You serve them next, portioning rice with a wooden paddle, each scoop a small act of love. Your husband, Taro, isn't here. Samurai often ate later or at the castle, a reminder of his world beyond these walls. Joke 1. If Taro thinks his sword drills are tough, he should try keeping Aiko from stealing her brother's fish. You pour tea for yourself last, the cup warm in your hands, and take a sip, savoring the brief calm before the storm of the day. The meal unfolds in near silence, as Edo etiquette demands. No one's scrolling on a phone or arguing about politics. Conversation is minimal, focused on the food or the weather. You notice Kenji sneaking an extra radish slice, and you let it slide, hiding a smile. The rice is perfect, each grain glossy and distinct, a testament to Hana's early morning scrubbing. You make a mental note to praise her later. Good servants are harder to keep than a straight face during your mother-in-law's rants. Joke 2. If you could bottle her glare, you'd sell it as a weapon to the shogun. You clear the table, stacking bowls with care to avoid chipping the ceramics. The act feels meditative, like folding your kimono earlier, each motion grounding you in the present. You recall that hidden poem in your obi, its words a quiet anchor amidst the morning's demands. The kitchen is emptying now. Your mother-in-law shuffles off to her room. The kids scamper to their lessons, and Hana starts scrubbing pots. You linger, sipping the last of your tea, the cup's warmth fading. Breakfast is done, but the day's rhythm is just beginning, and you're already bracing for the next task, keeping this household from unraveling like a poorly tied obi. You leave the kitchen, the faint clink of Hana's dishwashing fading behind you, and step into the main hall, where the air feels cooler, scented with the cedar of the walls. The house is awake now, alive with the soft creaks of wood and the shuffle of straw sandals. As a samurai wife, you're the conductor of this household's daily symphony, overseeing servants, supplies, and schedules with the tender precision of a tea master. Breakfast is done, but your work is just ramping up. Think of it as running a small business, except your board of directors includes a grumpy mother-in-law and 2 kids who think tidy is a foreign language. You head to the storage room, a dim space lined with woven baskets and lacquered boxes. Historical records from the Edo period show samurai wives managed household logistics, from rice stocks to lantern oil, ensuring nothing ran low. You kneel before a ledger, a thick book of washi paper where you track expenses with an ink-dipped brush. Today's task: check the rice supply and assign chores to the servants. You open a bamboo bin, the grains gleaming white, and estimate you've got enough for 2 weeks. A mental note: send Hana to the market tomorrow, but only after she stops oversalting the miso. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives kept a lucky abacus, carved with tiny carp for prosperity, believing it balanced the books and the household's karma. Yours sits nearby, its beads worn smooth from years of use. You slide them with a satisfying click, tallying last week's expenses. Fish, charcoal, a bolt of cotton for Aiko's new robe. Does it really bring luck? Historians still argue whether these charms were superstition or just a way to cope with endless math. But you like the carp's cheerful grin. You jot down today's chores in the ledger. Hana sweeps the courtyard. Old Tetsu repairs a leaky bucket, and you'll inspect the tatami for wear. You summon the servants, Hana, Tetsu, and a teenage boy named Riku who's better at daydreaming than polishing. They bow, and you assign tasks with calm authority, though Riku's distracted stare makes you wonder if he's mentally composing haiku again. Joke 1. If Riku put as much effort into scrubbing as he does into staring at clouds, the house would shine like the shogun's palace. You keep your tone gentle but firm. Samurai wives were expected to command respect without raising their voice, a skill you've honed through years of practice. Next, you inspect the house, gliding from room to room like a silk-clad detective. The shoji screens are spotless, their paper glowing softly in the morning light, but you spot a frayed tatami mat in the guest room. You'll need to replace it before your mother-in-law notices and launches into a lecture about standards. You pause at the alcove where you lit incense this morning, the sandalwood scent now faint. Everything must be perfect, not for vanity, but because a samurai's home reflects his honor, and you're the one holding that mirror. You return to the main hall, where Hana's sweeping the courtyard, her broom kicking up tiny puffs of dust. You catch her humming a folk tune, and it softens your mood. Joke 2. If Hana's singing could clean the house, you'd be out of a job by noon. You check the well, the laundry, the firewood stack, each task a thread in the tapestry of your day. The ledger's open on the table, a reminder to update it later, and you feel that poem in your obi again. Its words a quiet pulse of your own identity amidst the grind. Managing this household is like tying that obi this morning. Intricate, exhausting, but when it's done right, it holds everything together. You step out of the main hall, the ledger tucked safely away, and head toward a small room overlooking the garden where sunlight dances through a bamboo screen. The faint rustle of leaves and the trickle of a stone fountain create a bubble of calm, a rare moment where the world slows down. As a samurai wife, you're not just the household's manager, you're its heart, and right now, that heart is set on preparing for the tea ceremony, a ritual that's less about sipping a beverage and more about crafting a fleeting moment of perfection. Think of it as mindfulness with matcha, and you're the one making it happen. You kneel on a tatami mat, the straw firm beneath your knees, and open a lacquered box containing your tea utensils. Historical records from the Edo period describe the tea ceremony, or chanoyu, as a cornerstone of samurai culture, where every gesture carried meaning. Your tools are simple but sacred: a bamboo whisk, a ceramic bowl with a subtle green glaze, a silk cloth folded with surgical precision. You arrange them on a tray, each item placed just so, like pieces in a quiet chess game. The matcha powder, vibrant green, waits in a small caddy, its earthy scent grounding you as you begin. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives believe the tea bowl's imperfections, tiny cracks or uneven glaze, held spiritual wisdom reflecting life's fleeting nature. You trace a finger along your bowl's rim, noticing a faint chip from years of use. Is it profound or just clumsy handling? Historians still argue whether this wabi-sabi philosophy was universal or mostly for poets and pretentious lords, but you feel a flicker of connection to the bowl's quiet story. You smile, imagining Taro rolling his eyes if you tried explaining it to him. You start cleaning the utensils, a ritual in itself. You fold the silk cloth into a precise square, wiping the bowl with slow, deliberate strokes. The bamboo whisk gets a gentle rinse in a clay basin, its tines delicate as a bird's wing. Joke 1. If you cleaned the house this slowly, your mother-in-law would stage a coup by lunchtime. The process is meditative, each motion pulling you deeper into the moment. You're not just preparing tea, you're crafting an experience, one that will soothe your family or guests with its rhythm and grace. Next, you arrange the charcoal for the brazier, small black lumps that glow like tiny stars when lit. You place them in a pattern, ensuring the fire will burn evenly, and light them with a splinter of cedar. The smoke curls upward, sharp and woody, and you fan it gently with a paper fan. The room warms, and you feel the weight of your kimono. That obi still snug from this morning's tying marathon. You recall the poem tucked inside it, a secret thread tying you to yourself amidst these duties. The tea ceremony is your domain, a space where you control the pace, unlike the chaos of kids or servants. You practice the motions you'll perform later, scooping matcha, pouring hot water, whisking until the surface froths. Each step is choreography, your hands moving like a dancer's. Joke 2. If you whisked miso soup this vigorously, Hana would think you'd lost your mind. You pause, sipping a test bowl of tea, its bitterness softened by the froth. The garden outside hums with cicadas, and for a moment you're alone with your thoughts, the utensils, and the promise of a perfect ceremony. But the day presses on. Kenji's probably smudging his calligraphy by now, and you'll need to check on him soon. You set the bowl down, its chip catching the light, and rise, ready to shift gears. You leave the tea room, the faint scent of matcha and charcoal lingering on your sleeves, and head toward a small study where sunlight spills through a paper screen, painting the tatami in soft gold. The house is quieter now, the morning's bustle settling into a midday rhythm. As a samurai wife, your role extends beyond chores and rituals. You're also the guardian of your children's education, shaping their minds to uphold the family's honor. Today, you're overseeing Kenji and Aiko's lessons, ensuring they master calligraphy and the values that define your world. It's less about playing teacher and more about steering two tiny humans through the rigid expectations of Edo society. You kneel at a low desk where Kenji, 8, and Aiko, 5, are already seated, their inkstones and brushes laid out like soldiers at attention. Historical records from the Tokugawa era show samurai children studied calligraphy, Confucian texts, and etiquette from a young age, with mothers often supervising early lessons. Kenji's practicing kanji, his brush wobbling as he traces the character for duty. Aiko's on simpler strokes, her tongue poking out in concentration. You adjust her grip, your hand steady over hers, and praise her wobbly line. It's progress, even if it looks like a drunk crane drew it. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai mothers tied a string to their kids' wrists during lessons, believing it kept their focus tethered to the brush. You notice Kenji's gaze drifting to a butterfly outside, and you're tempted to try it. Instead, you tap the desk, and he snaps back, muttering an apology. Historians still argue whether these strings were common or just a quirky fad among overzealous parents, but you're not above a little creative discipline if Kenji keeps daydreaming. You review Kenji's work, his kanji improving but still uneven. You demonstrate, dipping your brush in ink and sweeping it across washi paper, the black blooming like a quiet storm. Slow down, you say, like you're pouring tea. He nods, mimicking your stroke, and you catch a flicker of pride in his eyes. Aiko's turn comes next. She's copying basic lines, but her paper is a battlefield of smudges. You smile, wiping a streak of ink from her cheek. Joke 1. If Aiko's calligraphy were a sword fight, she'd have inked the whole dojo by now. Beyond calligraphy, you weave in lessons on Bushido, loyalty, respect, self-control. You tell a story about a samurai who spared an enemy out of honor, your voice low and steady, lulling them into the tale. Kenji listens, rapt, while Aiko fidgets, clutching her straw doll. You keep it brief. They're young, and moral lectures are about as exciting as cold miso soup. You also check their reading, a slim book of Confucian sayings. Kenji stumbles over a passage, and you guide him. Your patience, a practiced art. Joke 2. If patience were a katana, you'd be slicing through chaos like a master. You notice the butterfly's gone, and the room feels still. The only sound the scratch of brushes and Aiko's occasional hum. You think back to your own lessons, your mother's firm voice drilling kanji into your head. That poem in your obi feels like a nod to her, a reminder of the woman you've become. Education here isn't just about skills. It's about legacy, ensuring Kenji and Aiko carry the family's name with grace. You correct one last stroke, then send them to practice independently while you check on Hana's sweeping. The day is moving fast and lunch is looming, but for now you linger, watching your kids scribble, their small hands shaping the future one shaky line at a time. You step away from the study, the soft scratch of your children's brushes fading as you move toward the kitchen, where the air hums with the promise of lunch. The house feels alive, its wooden beams creaking faintly under the midday sun, and a breeze carries the scent of pine from the garden. As a samurai wife, meal planning is your domain, a delicate balance of nutrition, tradition, and aesthetics that keeps your household grounded. Lunch isn't just food, it's a moment to gather, to reinforce the family's rhythm, and you're the one orchestrating every detail from the rice's fluffiness to the pickle's crunch. You kneel at the low kitchen table, its surface worn smooth by years of meals, and survey the ingredients Hana's laid out. Historical records from the Edo period describe samurai lunches as modest but thoughtful, often featuring rice, a vegetable dish, and a small protein, with presentation as crucial as taste. Today, you're planning rice topped with sesame seeds, a stew of lotus root and carrots, and grilled sardines, their silver skins gleaming. You also spot a small bowl of umeboshi, sour plums pickled in salt, their puckering bite a family favorite. You nod to Hana, who's chopping vegetables with a knife that's seen more battles than most samurai. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives slipped a single red bean into the rice for luck, believing it warded off bad spirits. You sprinkle a few into the pot, their tiny crimson dots vanishing among the grains. Is it superstition or tradition? Historians still argue whether this was widespread or just a regional quirk, but you like the idea of a secret charm hidden in the meal. You stir the stew, the lotus root softening into the broth, and check the sardines grilling over a clay brazier, their smoky aroma curling through the room. You arrange the dishes with care, each bowl a small canvas. The rice goes into lacquered bowls, the stew in shallow ceramic dishes with a blue glaze, and the sardines on a wooden platter, their heads artfully aligned. You place an umeboshi beside each portion, its pink hue a pop of color. Joke 1. If you arranged Taro's armor this neatly, he'd think you were plotting a coup. Presentation matters. Edo etiquette demands meals look as good as they taste, a rule your mother-in-law never lets you forget. She's napping now, thankfully, so you've got a moment to breathe before her inevitable critique. You call Kenji and Aiko, who tumble in, their calligraphy lessons abandoned. Kenji eyes the sardines like they're his personal treasure, while Aiko wrinkles her nose at the umeboshi. You serve them, sliding bowls across the table with a practiced flick, and pour barley tea, its nutty warmth a perfect match for the meal. The kids eat quickly, Kenji sneaking an extra plum when he thinks you're not looking. You let it slide, sipping your tea and savoring the quiet. Joke 2. If stealth were a subject, Kenji would be the shogun of sneaky snacking. You eat last, as custom dictates, the rice still warm, the stew's sweetness balancing the sardines as salt. You think of that poem in your obi, its words a quiet pulse against the day's demands. Lunch is a pause, a chance to recharge before the afternoon's social calls and sewing tasks. You glance at the garden, where a sparrow hops along a stone path, and feel a flicker of calm. Hana clears the table, her movement swift, and you rise, ready to shift gears. The meal's done, but its warmth lingers, a small victory in the endless dance of your day. You leave the kitchen, the clatter of lunch dishes fading as Hana takes over, and step into the main hall, where the afternoon light slants through shoji screens, casting a warm glow on the tatami. The house feels settled now, the midday meal a quiet anchor, but your work as a samurai wife doesn't pause. Social calls are next, neighbors dropping by for tea, gossip, and the unspoken game of sizing up each other's households. You're about to host a trio of local wives, and in Edo, Japan, these visits are less about friendship and more about maintaining alliances, all while dodging verbal landmines. Think of it as a tea party with stakes. You settle in a small receiving room, its alcove adorned with a single scroll painting of a heron, chosen for its understated elegance. Historical records from the Tokugawa era note that samurai wives were expected to excel in hospitality, turning casual visits into displays of grace and control. You arrange cushions on the tatami, each one embroidered with a subtle pine motif, and set out a tray with your tea ceremony tools from earlier. The same green glazed bowl, now a prop for this social chess match. A plate of mochi, dusted with kinako powder, sits nearby, a sweet gesture to soften the conversation. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives hid a tiny bell in their kimono sleeve, jingling it discreetly to signal servants for more tea. You've got one tucked in your sleeve, a bronze charm the size of a plum pit. Does it actually work, or is it just a confidence boost? Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or a quirky habit of paranoid hostesses, but you're ready to test it if the tea runs low. You adjust your obi, feeling that poem still nestled there, a secret keeping you grounded amidst the coming chatter. The wives arrive. Yuki, sharp-tongued but charming, Mio, quiet but observant, and Kate, who never stops talking about her husband's promotions. They bow, and you return the gesture, your kimono rustling softly. You pour tea, whisking matcha with the same precision you practiced earlier, each frothy bowl a small offering. Yuki compliments the mochi, but her eyes scan the room, probably tallying the quality of your cushions. Joke 1. If Yuki's gaze were a katana, your decor would be sliced to ribbons by now. You smile, deflecting her probing questions about Taro's recent castle duties with vague pleasantries. Conversation drifts to village gossip. Someone's servant ran off, a merchant overcharged for silk. You nod, steering clear of controversy, but Kaida's loud laugh grates like a poorly tuned shamisen. You jingle the bell in your sleeve, and Hana appears with more tea, her timing impeccable. Mio mentions a festival coming up, and you seize the chance to shift focus, describing your plans for lanterns and rice cakes. Joke 2. If you planned festivals as fast as Cade talks, the village would celebrate weekly. The women sip their tea, and you keep the mood light, your voice soft and steady, lulling them into the ritual of the visit. You recall the rice you checked this morning, the ledger's neat columns, and feel a flicker of pride in your household's order. These women are allies, but they're also judges, and every detail, from the mochi's texture to the heron scroll, reflects your skill. The visit winds down, the wives rising with polite farewells. You escort them to the door, bowing as they leave, their chatter fading into the courtyard. You return to the room, the tea bowl's empty, and sink onto a cushion, the weight of your kimono heavier now. Social calls are done, but the day's not over. Embroidery awaits, and you're already dreaming of a quiet moment with your needle. You slip away from the receiving room, the faint sweetness of mochi still lingering in the air, and head to a quiet corner of the house where a low table waits, its surface scattered with threads and fabric. The afternoon sun filters through a bamboo screen, casting dappled shadows on the tatami, and the distant chirp of cicadas hums like a lullaby. As a samurai wife, embroidery isn't just a hobby. It's a craft that weaves your family's identity into every stitch, from kimono patterns to household crests. You're here to work on a new design, a crane motif for Taro's formal robe, and maybe steal a moment of calm in the process. You kneel, your kimono pooling around you, and open a lacquered box filled with silk threads in shades of indigo, crimson, and gold. Historical records from the Edo period highlight embroidery as a valued skill for samurai wives, used to adorn clothing and signal status through intricate designs. You select a needle, its tip fine as a whisper, and thread it with gold, the strand catching the light like a tiny flame. The fabric before you is hemp, dyed deep blue, stretched taut in a wooden hoop. You sketch the crane's outline with charcoal, its wings curved in mid-flight, a symbol of longevity and loyalty. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives stitched a single mistake into their work, a crooked stitch, or misplaced knot, believing it honored life's imperfections. You pause, considering a deliberate flaw in the crane's tail, just a hair off center. Is it humility or superstition? Historians still argue whether this was a common practice or a romanticized myth, but you like the idea of a secret rebellion woven into the fabric. You begin stitching, each pull of the needle a small meditation, the thread gliding through the hemp with a soft rasp. Your stitches are precise, the crane's form taking shape as you layer gold over indigo. The process is slow, almost hypnotic, your hands moving in a rhythm that quiets your mind. You think of the tea ceremony earlier, the same deliberate care in every gesture, and that poem in your obi, its words a quiet anchor. Joke 1. If you stitched as fast as Kide talks, you'd have a whole flock of cranes by now. The room feels still, the only sound the faint creak of the hoop and your own steady breathing. You glance at the garden, where a sparrow hops along a stone, and feel a flicker of peace. Halfway through, you switch to crimson thread for the crane's crown, its vivid hue a spark against the blue. Your fingers ache slightly. Embroidery is delicate but demanding, like tying that obi this morning. You recall Yuki's sharp eyes during the social call, probably judging your cushions, and smirk. Joke 2. If you embroidered Yuki's gossip, you'd need a kimono the size of Edo Castle. You keep stitching, the crane's wings now sharp and graceful, a testament to your skill. This robe will be worn at a clan gathering, and every stitch carries the weight of Taro's honor, and yours. You pause to stretch, your kimono's weight tugging at your shoulders. The crane is nearly done, but you'll save the final touches for tomorrow. You tidy the threads, tucking them back into the box, and rise, the hoop left on the table like a promise. The day's moving on, dinner prep looms, and you need to check on Kenji's calligraphy before he smudges another sheet. You carry the calm of this moment with you, the crane's golden wings a quiet victory, and step into the corridor ready for the next task in your endless, elegant dance. You step out of the embroidery room, the soft rasp of silk thread still echoing in your mind, and head toward the garden, where the late afternoon sun bathes the courtyard in a golden haze. The air smells of damp earth and pine, and a gentle breeze rustles the leaves of a small maple tree. As a samurai wife, tending the garden is more than a chore. It's a quiet act of creation, a chance to shape beauty and find peace amidst the day's demands. You're here to prune the bonsai and check the stone path, turning this patch of earth into a living poem, one careful snip at a time. You kneel beside a gnarled pine bonsai, its twisted branches sculpted over decades to mimic a wind-swept cliff tree. Historical records from the Edo period describe samurai households maintaining gardens as extensions of their honor, with bonsai symbolizing discipline and patience. You pick up a pair of iron shears, their handles worn smooth by years of use, and study the pine's newest growth. Each snip must be precise. Too much, and you ruin the balance. Too little, and it looks unkempt. You clip a tiny branch, the cut clean, and brush away the needles, your fingers dusted with sap. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives whispered to their bonsai, believing kind words encouraged growth. You lean close, murmuring, "Keep growing, little tree," with a half smile. Does it work, or is it just garden therapy? Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or a whimsical tale from old journals, but you figure it can't hurt. The pine seems to stand a bit prouder, though that might be the sunlight playing tricks. You move to the next bonsai, a juniper, its needles sharp but forgiving, and trim with the same care, each snip a small meditation. The garden is small but deliberate. A stone path curves around a koi pond where fish glide like living jewels. You check the path, nudging a loose stone back into place with your sandal. Joke 1. If you aligned Taro's armor this neatly, he'd think you were training for the Shogun's guard. The pond's water is clear, but you spot a stray leaf floating and fish it out with a bamboo stick. The koi swirl, expecting food, and you toss in a pinch of dried shrimp, watching them dart with lazy grace. This garden is your sanctuary, a place where the weight of your kimono and that obi with its hidden poem feels lighter. You move to a cluster of chrysanthemums, their petals a soft pink, and pinch off wilted blooms, your hands moving with the same precision as your embroidery earlier. The act feels like stitching, each choice shaping the whole. You recall Yuki's sharp gaze during the social call and smirk. Her garden's probably a mess of overgrown ferns. Joke 2. If gossip grew like weeds, Yuki's yard would be a jungle by now. You sweep the path with a bamboo broom, the rhythmic swish blending with the cicada's hum, and feel a flicker of calm like sipping that test bowl of matcha this morning. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow with a hemp cloth tucked in your sleeve. The bonsai look balanced, the path tidy, the flowers vibrant. This garden reflects your care, just as the crane embroidery reflects your skill. Dinner prep is next, and Kenji's probably smudging his kanji again, but for now you linger, the shears resting in your lap. The maple's leaves glow red against the sky, and you breathe deep, carrying this moment's peace forward, ready to face the evening's demands with a steadier heart. You leave the garden, the scent of pine sap clinging to your fingers, and glide back into the house, where the air shifts to the warm, familiar cedar of the interior. The late afternoon sun is dipping, casting long shadows through the shoji screens, and the household is stirring toward evening. As a samurai wife, dinner is your next performance. A carefully composed meal that balances flavor, tradition, and the unspoken expectation of perfection. You're heading to the kitchen to orchestrate this nightly ritual, blending ingredients and egos into something that satisfies both body and spirit. It's less about cooking and more about crafting harmony, one bowl at a time. You kneel at the kitchen's low table, its surface scarred from years of chopping and serving, and survey the ingredients Hana's prepared. Historical records from the Edo period describe samurai dinners as slightly more elaborate than lunch, often featuring rice, a main dish like simmered fish or tofu, and sides of vegetables and pickles. Tonight, you're planning koi koku, a carp stew rich with miso and burdock root alongside rice, steamed spinach with soy dressing, and a small dish of pickled ginger. The carp, fresh from a local fisherman, gleams on a wooden board, its scales catching the fading light. You nod to Hana, who's fanning the clay stove, her cheeks flushed from the heat. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives added a single chrysanthemum petal to the stew, believing it brought clarity to the mind. You pluck a pink petal from the garden's flowers, saved earlier, and drop it into the pot, where it floats like a tiny boat. Is it medicinal or just poetic nonsense? Historians still argue whether this was a common practice or a fanciful touch by overly romantic cooks, but you like the idea of a secret ingredient, like that poem still tucked in your obi. You stir the stew, the miso's earthy scent rising, and check the rice steaming in a cedar bucket, each grain plump and glossy. You slice the carp with a knife sharp enough to shame Taro's katana, your cuts precise to avoid wasting a scrap. The fish goes into the pot with burdock and green onions, simmering into a fragrant broth. You dress the spinach, drizzling soy with a steady hand, and arrange the ginger in tiny ceramic dishes, their red slivers bright as the maple leaves outside. Joke 1. If you plated meals this carefully at breakfast, Kenji would think you'd joined the shogun's court. Presentation is key. Every dish must look like a painting. A rule drilled into you by your mother-in-law, who's probably waking from her nap to inspect your work. You call the family, and Kenji and Aiko bound in. Aiko clutching her straw doll, Kenji eyeing the stew like it's his personal victory feast. Your mother-in-law shuffles in, her gaze sharp as ever, and you serve her first, sliding a bowl of rice with a polite bow. Taro's still at the castle, so you set aside a portion for him, covered with a lacquered lid. The meal unfolds quietly, as Edo etiquette demands, the only sounds the clink of chopsticks and Aiko's occasional giggle. Joke 2. If silence were a skill, Aiko would be failing spectacularly right now. You eat last, the stew's warmth spreading through you, the chrysanthemum petal a fleeting tang on your tongue. You clear the table, stacking bowls with care, the rhythm as soothing as your embroidery stitches. The kitchen feels like a small kingdom, and you're its quiet ruler, ensuring every detail, from the stew's depth to the ginger's bite, holds the household together. Hana scrubs the pots, and you glance at the garden where dusk is settling. Bath time is next, but for now you linger. The meal's success, a soft glow in your chest, carrying you forward into the evening's next act. You step out of the kitchen, the warm afterglow of dinner fading as you move through the house, where the evening air carries a hint of cooling cedar and the distant croak of frogs. The shoji screens glow faintly with the last of the twilight, and the household is shifting toward night, a quieter rhythm settling in. As a samurai wife, your day doesn't end with the meal. Now you're preparing to welcome Taro home from his duties at the castle. His return is a pivotal moment, a chance to ease his burdens and reaffirm your role as the heart of this home. You're not just greeting your husband, you're anchoring him to this world of tatami and lantern light. You glide to the main hall, where a single oil lamp flickers, casting soft shadows on the walls. Historical records from the Edo period note that samurai often returned late, their days filled with training, meetings, or guarding the daimyo, leaving wives to manage the emotional transition from warrior to family man. You straighten a cushion on the tatami, its silk embroidered with the same crane motif you worked on earlier, and check the alcove, where a fresh sprig of pine replaces the morning's incense. Everything must feel calm, a contrast to the rigid world Taro navigates outside. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives sprinkled salt at the threshold before their husband's return, believing it purified the space of lingering tensions. You scatter a pinch across the entrance, the grains glinting in the lamplight. Does it actually cleanse anything, or is it just a placebo for frazzled nerves? Historians still argue whether this was a widespread ritual or a superstitious quirk of anxious households, but you figure it's worth a try. Taro's been grumpy after long castle days before. You smile, thinking of that poem in your obi, its words a secret charm to keep you steady. You hear the crunch of gravel outside, Taro's steady stride unmistakable. You kneel at the entrance, your kimono pulling gracefully, and slide open the door. He stands there, his armor dusty, his katana sheathed at his side, his face etched with the day's weight. You bow, your voice soft. Welcome home. He nods, stepping inside, and you take his sandals, placing them neatly on a rack. Joke 1. If you polished Taro's armor as fast as Hana scrubs pots, he'd shine like a festival lantern. You lead him to the hall, where a small tray waits with a cup of barley tea and a rice cake, a simple gesture to ease him into the evening. You sit across from him, pouring the tea, its nutty warmth curling between you. He talks sparingly, something about a new drill or a lord's complaint. But you listen, nodding, your presence a quiet anchor. You mention the kid's calligraphy, Aiko's smudges, and he cracks a rare smile. You don't bring up the social call or Yuki's gossip. This moment is for him. Joke 2. If Taro's castle stories were as lively as Aiko's giggles, you'd never sleep. You refill his cup, the lamp's glow softening his edges, and feel the house settle around you, its rhythm aligning with his return. You rise to prepare his bath, but for now you linger, watching him sip his tea. The salt at the threshold, the crane cushion, the poem in your obi, they're small acts, but they weave this moment together, a bridge between his world and yours. The kids are probably arguing over their straw doll somewhere, and your mother-in-law's likely eavesdropping, but here, it's just you and Taro, the day's demands fading into the flicker of the lamp. You carry this quiet connection forward, ready to shift gears for the bath ritual, your role as steady as the tatami beneath your knees. You leave Taro in the main hall, his teacup cradled in his calloused hands, and move toward a small room at the back of the house, where the air grows steamy and smells faintly of cedar and hot water. The evening has deepened, the shoji screen's now dark, reflecting only the flicker of a nearby lantern. As a samurai wife, preparing the family bath is your next task, a ritual of comfort and cleanliness that soothes the household into the night. You're setting up the wooden tub, ensuring everyone from Taro to Aiko gets their moment of warmth, and it's your job to make it feel like a small luxury, even in this disciplined world. You enter the bath area, a compact space with a cedar tub raised on stones and a clay stove glowing beneath it. Historical records from the Edo period describe bathing as a daily necessity for samurai families, not just for hygiene, but for spiritual renewal, with wives overseeing the process. You check the water heated by Hana earlier, its surface rippling with steam. You dip a bamboo ladle, testing the temperature, hot but not scalding, just how Taro likes it. You add a handful of dried yuzu peels, their citrus tang curling through the steam, a touch to brighten the senses. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives floated a single camellia flower in the bath, believing it invited calm dreams. You drop one in, its pink petals bobbing like a tiny boat. Does it really work, or is it just a pretty superstition? Historians still argue whether this was a common custom or a poetic flourish in old diaries, but you like the way it softens the tub's stark wood. You smile, thinking of that poem still tucked in your obi. Its words a quiet echo of these small, deliberate acts. You prepare the washing area first, where a low stool and a bucket of cooler water wait. Taro will scrub here before soaking, as Edo bathing etiquette demands. Cleanse the body, then ease the soul. You set out a hemp cloth and a bar of rice bran soap, its nutty scent mingling with the yuzu. Joke 1. If you scrubbed Kenji's calligraphy smudges this thoroughly, his paper would be spotless by now. You arrange a folded towel, it's cotton-worn but soft, and check the stove, adding a small log to keep the water warm for the kids and your mother-in-law later. Taro arrives, shedding his outer robe, and you step out to give him privacy, lingering in the corridor. You hear the splash of water, the soft scrape of the cloth, and feel a flicker of satisfaction. This bath is your gift to him, a pause after his castle duties. You prepare for the kids next, setting out smaller towels and a milder soap for Aiko's sensitive skin. Your mother-in-law will bathe last, as custom dictates, and you've already braced for her inevitable complaint about the water's heat. Joke 2. If grumbling were a bath, your mother-in-law would soak all day. You check the tub again, skimming a stray yuzu peel from the surface, the camellia still floating serenely. The bathroom feels like a small sanctuary, its warmth and scent a contrast to the day's endless tasks. You think back to the garden's bonsai, the crane embroidery, the dinner's chrysanthemum petal, each a thread in the tapestry of your role. The kids are probably wrestling over their straw doll, and you'll need to herd them in soon. But for now, you linger in the corridor, the steam's heat brushing your face, carrying the promise of a quieter night ahead. You step away from the bath area, the faint citrus tang of yuzu lingering in the air, and glide toward a small room where the tatami smells faintly of straw, and the night's quiet has settled like a soft blanket. A single lantern glows, its paper shade diffusing the light into a warm haze, and the distant croak of frogs weaves into the stillness. As a samurai wife, your evenings often end with poetry, a ritual that soothes the household into sleep. You're here to read verses aloud, your voice a gentle thread tying the day's chaos into a moment of calm, lulling Kenji, Aiko, and even your mother-in-law into the night. You kneel at a low table, a lacquered box before you, holding a stack of washi paper, each sheet inscribed with poems in flowing ink. Historical records from the Edo period note that poetry, especially waka and haiku, was a cherished art in samurai households, with wives often reading or composing verses to cultivate refinement and peace. You select a poem by Lady Izumi Shikibu, its lines about moonlight and longing perfect for tonight's mood. You smooth the paper, its texture cool under your fingers, and clear your throat, ready to let the words drift like falling leaves. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives believed reading poetry under a full moon strengthened its calming power, as if the lunar glow amplified the verses. Tonight's moon is just a sliver, but you imagine its light seeping through the shoji, adding a faint magic to your voice. Does it really matter, or is it just poetic superstition? Historians still argue whether this lunar connection was widespread or a romantic flourish in old journals, but you like the idea of the moon as your silent audience. You smile, feeling that poem still tucked in your obi, its words a private echo of this moment. You begin reading, your voice low and steady, each syllable paced to lull. Though I try to hide it, my heart trembles like moonlight on water. Kenji and Aiko are curled on cushions, Aiko clutching her straw doll, her eyes half closed. Your mother-in-law sits stiffly, but even she softens, her usual frown easing. The words weave a spell, the room growing quieter with each line. You shift to a haiku about a crane, fitting, after your embroidery, its imagery of wings against dusk pulling you back to your needlework. Joke 1. If you read as slowly as Kenji writes kanji, you'd all be asleep by the first verse. You turn to another poem, this one about a river's flow, its rhythm mirroring the day's endless tasks: rice, tea, bonsai, baths. The kids are nodding off, Aiko's doll slipping from her grasp, and you lower your voice further, letting the words blur into a soothing hum. Your mother-in-law's eyes are closed now, her breathing slow, and you feel a flicker of triumph. Joke 2. If poetry tames her sharper than miso soup, you'll read every night. You recall the social call with Yuki's gossip, the garden's calm, the dinner's warmth. Each moment a stanza in your day, now folding into this quiet ritual. You finish with a short waka, its lines about stars, and dreams a gentle close. The lantern flickers, its oil nearly spent, and the room feels heavy with sleep. You tuck the poems back into their box, the washi rustling softly, and rise. Your kimono's weight familiar, but grounding. The kids need to be carried to their futons, and you'll check the house soon. But for now, you linger. The poetry's cadence still humming in your chest. That obi poem feels like a final verse, tying you to yourself as the night deepens, ready for the next task in this endless, elegant dance. You ease out of the poetry room, the soft echo of your verses fading as you move through the house, where the night has draped itself over the tatami like a heavy silk robe. The lantern's glow is gone, replaced by moonlight seeping through the shoji, casting pale stripes across Sabakita's cedar floor. As a samurai wife, your day isn't complete without balancing the household's finances, a task as delicate as your embroidery and as crucial as your tea ceremony. You're heading to a small alcove to review the ledger, ensuring your family's resources, rice, coin, and candle wax, stretch through the month, all while keeping the shogun's tax collectors at bay. You kneel at a low desk, its surface smooth from years of use, and light a single oil lamp, its flame flickering like a sleepy firefly. Historical records from the Edo period show samurai wives often managed budgets, tracking expenses with meticulous care to maintain the household's honor and solvency. You open the ledger from earlier, its washi pages filled with your neat kanji, and dip a brush in ink, the scent sharp and grounding. You review the week's costs: fish for dinner, charcoal for the bath, cotton for Aiko's robe. The numbers must align, or you'll face your mother-in-law's arched brow come market day. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives kept a fortune coin in their ledger, a single copper piece believed to attract wealth if turned daily. You fish out yours, a worn mon with a square hole, and give it a quick spin, its faint clink a small charm against lean times. Does it actually work, or is it just wishful accounting? Historians still argue whether this was a common practice or a superstition born of endless budgeting. But you like its weight in your palm, a reminder of your control. You smile, thinking of that poem still tucked in your obi, its words a quiet pulse against the ledger's cold math. You tally the rice stock, enough for 10 days, thanks to your morning check, and note Hana's market trip tomorrow for more miso and lamp oil. You calculate the month's stipend from Taro's lord, a modest sum that demands your thrift. The abacus clicks under your fingers, its carp-carved beads a nod to that lucky charm from your storage room days. Joke 1. If you balanced Taro's sword drills as well as this budget, he'd be the shogun's champion by now. You jot down a reminder to repair a tatami mat. Its cost a small dent, but necessary before guests notice. You pause, noticing a discrepancy, a missing coin from last week's fish purchase. You frown, suspecting Riku's dreamy math skills, and make a note to double-check with him. Your brush moves steadily, each stroke as precise as your bonsai snips, weaving order from chaos. You recall Yuki's gossip during the social call, her hints about a neighbor's debt, and smirk. Your ledger's cleaner than her rumors. Joke 2, if gossip paid the bills, Yuki's house would rival Edo Castle. The lamp's flame wavers, and you adjust its wick, the room steadying in its glow. You close the ledger, satisfied for now, and tuck the fortune coin back inside. The house is silent, save for the faint creak of wood and Aiko's soft snores from her futon. You think of the crane embroidery, the bath's camellia, the poetry's moonlight, each a thread in your day, now anchored by these numbers. Budgeting isn't glamorous, but it's your shield. Keeping the household afloat, you rise, the kimono's weight tugging at your shoulders, and head toward the next task, a festival plan looming. But for now, you carry the ledger's clarity, ready to face the night's final demands. You step away from the alcove, the ledger's neat columns still sharp in your mind, and move through the house, where the night air feels thick with the scent of cedar and the hush of a sleeping household. Moonlight spills through a shoji screen, painting the tatami in silver streaks, and a distant owl hoots, punctuating the stillness. As a samurai wife, your days often weave in preparations for community events, and a local festival honoring the rice harvest is approaching. You're heading to a small storage room to plan, gathering supplies, sketching lantern designs, and ensuring your family's contribution shines without outstaging the village. It's less about celebration and more about quiet strategy, balancing tradition with tact. You kneel at a low table, its surface cluttered with washi paper and a bamboo basket of odds and ends. Historical records from the Edo period describe festivals as key social events for samurai families, with wives organizing offerings like rice cakes or lanterns to display loyalty and harmony. You pull out a sheet of paper and a charcoal stick, sketching a lantern design, a simple cylinder with a crane motif echoing your embroidery. You list supplies, bamboo for frames, mulberry paper for shades, candles for light. You'll need Hana to fetch more wax tomorrow, assuming she doesn't get distracted by market gossip. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives tied a red thread around their festival lanterns, believing it bound the family's wishes to the harvest spirits. You finger a spool of crimson thread, considering looping it around your design. Does it carry any real power, or is it just a hopeful flourish? Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or a sentimental habit of rural households, but you like the idea of a wish woven into the light, much like that poem still tucked in your obi, a secret anchor for your intentions. You calculate costs, mentally cross-referencing the ledger you just closed. The festival won't strain the budget, but you'll skip pricier soy-glazed mochi in favor of plain rice cakes, dressed up with sesame seeds. You jot down a plan for the kids. Kenji can help paint the lanterns. Aiko can scatter petals during the procession, though she'll probably try eating them first. Joke 1. If Aiko's petal tossing is as wild as her calligraphy, the festival will look like a flower storm. You sketch a second lantern, this one with a pine motif, and note the village headman's preference for understated designs. Flashy displays could spark whispers of arrogance. You rummage through the basket, finding bamboo strips and a small jar of paste for the lantern frames. The work feels like you're garden tending, deliberate, grounding, each choice shaping something larger. You recall Yuki's chatter during the social call, her hints about another wife's gaudy festival float, and smirk. Your cranes will outshine her without trying too hard. Joke 2. If Yuki's festival plans were as loud as her gossip, the village would need earplugs. You set the sketches aside, satisfied with the progress, and rise, the kimono's weight a familiar tug as you move. The house is silent, save for the faint creak of a floorboard under your step. You think of the bath's camellia, the poetry's moonlight, the ledger's clarity, each a thread in your day, now tied to this festival's promise. You'll finalize the plans tomorrow, but for now, you carry the vision of glowing lanterns, their light a quiet offering to the harvest and your family's place in it. A shrine visit is next, but you pause, the charcoal smudge on your fingers a small badge of your planning, ready to weave the next moment into your night's rhythm. You leave the storage room, the faint scent of charcoal and mulberry paper lingering on your hands, and glide through the house, where the night has deepened, the air cool and heavy with the hush of sleeping tatami rooms. A sliver of moonlight slips through a shoji screen, tracing delicate shadows on the cedar floor, and the distant hum of crickets weaves a soft backdrop. As a samurai wife, your day often includes moments of spiritual connection, and now you're heading to the household's kamidana, a small shrine, to offer prayers for your family's health and harmony. This quiet ritual is your chance to pause, to seek blessings amid the endless tasks, and to anchor the household in something larger than rice and ledgers. You kneel before the kamidana, a modest wooden shelf tucked in an alcove, adorned with a miniature torii gate and a mirror reflecting the flicker of a single oil lamp. Historical records from the Edo period describe samurai households maintaining Shinto shrines to honor kami, the spirits of nature and ancestors, with wives often leading daily offerings. You arrange a small dish of rice from tonight's dinner, its grains still warm, and place a sprig of sakaki, its glossy leaves a symbol of purity. You light a stick of sandalwood incense, its smoke curling upward like a whispered prayer, filling the air with a woody calm. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives clapped twice before praying, believing the sound woke the kami to hear their wishes. You clap softly, the sharp sound echoing in the stillness, your hands tingling from the act. Does it truly stir the spirits, or is it just a hopeful gesture? Historians still argue whether this was a universal practice or a regional quirk, but you feel a flicker of connection, like the poem still tucked in your obi, its words a private offering alongside the rice. You bow, your kimono rustling, and murmur a prayer for Taro's safety, the kid's growth, and even your mother-in-law's softer moods. You think of the day's rhythm, embroidery's precision, the garden's calm, the festival's lanterns, and see them reflected in this moment's simplicity. The rice offering ties back to your morning's careful measurements, a thread of continuity. You pray for the harvest festival's success, picturing your crane lanterns glowing under the stars, and for Kenji's wobbly kanji to steady, a small wish for his future. Joke 1. If the kami-grade calligraphy, Kenji's got some divine tutoring ahead. Your voice is low, almost a whisper, the words blending with the incense smoke, lulling even you into a quieter state. You straighten the sakaki sprig, its leaves catching the lamp's glow, and feel the weight of your role, not just wife, but keeper of this household spirit. You recall Yuki's gossip from the social call, her sharp eyes missing the deeper currents of duty, and smirk. Joke 2. If Yuki prayed as much as she talked, the kami would need a nap. The shrine feels alive, its mirror glinting like an eye, and you bow again, sealing the prayer. The house is silent, save for Aiko's faint snores from her futon, and you rise, the kimono's familiar tug grounding you as you move. The ritual is brief but heavy, a moment where the day's threads, rice, cranes, poetry, knot together in something sacred. You think of the bath's camellia, the ledger's clarity, the poetry's moonlight, each a step toward this altar. Sewing winter garments is next, but for now you linger, the incense's last curls fading, carrying your prayers into the night. You step away, the kamidana's calm, a soft pulse in your chest, ready to weave the next task into your endless, elegant dance. You step away from the kamidana, the faint wisp of sandalwood incense trailing behind you, and move through the house, where the night has wrapped the tatami rooms in a deep, velvety quiet. Moonlight seeps through a shoji screen, casting ghostly patterns on the cedar floor, and the soft chirp of a lone cricket hums in the distance. As a samurai wife, your evenings often turn to practical tasks that prepare for the seasons ahead. And with winter's chill not far off, you're heading to a small workroom to sew garments for the colder months. This isn't just mending, it's crafting warmth and status, stitching your family's comfort into every seam. You kneel at a low table, its surface cluttered with bolts of hemp and cotton, a bamboo basket of needles, and spools of thread in muted blues and grays. Historical records from the Edo period note that samurai wives tailored clothing, especially winter robes, to ensure durability and elegance, often layering fabrics for insulation without sacrificing grace. You select a bolt of thick cotton dyed a soft ash gray and spread it across the table, its texture cool but promising under your fingers. You're making a padded kosode for Kenji, something to keep him warm during his kendo drills, and maybe a scarf for Aiko, who shivers at the slightest breeze. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives stitched a tiny protective charm, a folded slip of paper with a prayer, into the hem of children's robes, believing it shielded them from illness. You cut a small square of washi, scribble a quick blessing for Kenji's health, and tuck it into the fabric, ready to sew it in. Does it guard against colds, or is it just a mother's hope? Historians still argue whether this was a common practice or a sentimental habit of anxious parents, but you feel a flicker of reassurance, like that poem still nestled in your obi, a secret thread tying you to your kids. You thread a needle with gray silk, its sheen catching the lantern's flicker, and begin stitching, your hands moving with the same precision as your embroidery days ago. The kosode's sleeves take shape, each seam tight to trap warmth. You layer cotton batting inside, fluffing it like rice grains in a pot, and sew it secure, the needle's rhythm a quiet pulse. Joke 1. If you stitched as fast as Aiko eats umeboshi, Kenji'd have a whole wardrobe by dawn. You think of the crane motif from your earlier work, but keep this design plain. Kenji's too young for flashy robes, and Taro prefers simplicity. You pause to cut fabric for Aiko's scarf, choosing a softer, hemp-dyed pale blue, like the winter sky. You fold it double for extra warmth and stitch a simple hem, imagining her wrapping it around her neck, her straw doll tucked under her arm. The room feels still. The only sound the needle's soft rasp and the occasional creak of the house settling. You recall the kamidana's rice offering, the festival's lanterns, the bath's camellia, each a thread in your day, now woven into these garments. Joke 2. If your mother-in-law judged sewing like she judges soup, you'd be restitching this by moonlight. You finish Kenji's sleeve, the charm hidden in its hem, and set it aside, the scarf nearly done. The lantern's oil is low, its flame wavering, but you'll save the rest for tomorrow. You tidy the table, folding the cotton back into its bolt, and rise, the kimono's weight tugging as always. Winter prep is a quiet victory, each stitch a promise of comfort. A community meeting looms next, but for now, you linger, the needle still warm in your hand, carrying the calm of this moment into the night's next act. You step out of the workroom, the faint rustle of cotton fabric lingering in your mind, and glide through the house, where the night has settled into a profound stillness, the air cool and scented with cedar. Moonlight filters through a shoji screen, tracing faint silver veins across the tatami, and the distant hoot of an owl punctuates the quiet. As a samurai wife, your role extends beyond the household to the village, where you connect with other women to discuss community matters. You're heading to a late gathering with local wives, a meeting to plan the harvest festival, and address village concerns, all while navigating the delicate dance of alliances and egos. It's less a social club and more a council, and you're ready to hold your own. You slip into a small receiving room, where a low table is set with a single lantern, its paper shade casting a warm glow. Historical records from the Edo period note that samurai wives often participated in community meetings, coordinating festivals or resolving minor disputes to maintain village harmony. You arrange cushions, their silk embroidered with pine needles, and set out a tray with barley tea and plain rice crackers. Simple fare to keep the focus on business. You adjust your kimono, the obi's weight familiar, that poem still tucked inside like a quiet talisman against the evening's verbal sparring. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives carried a folded fan to meetings, using its flicks to signal agreement or dissent without speaking. You pull out your fan, painted with a subtle willow pattern, and practice a discreet wave, its breeze cool on your face. Does it really sway opinions, or is it just a stylish prop? Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or a tactic of particularly cunning women, but you like its subtle power, a nod to the grace you honed during the tea ceremony. You smile, ready to face Yuki's inevitable gossip and Keide's endless chatter. The wives arrive. Yuki, her eyes sharp as ever. Kaide, already talking about her husband's new horse. And Mio, quiet but watchful. You pour tea, the cups clinking softly, and open the discussion with festival plans. You share your crane lantern sketches, suggesting a procession route that highlights the village shrine. Yuki proposes a flashier float, and you deflect with a smile, fanning yourself gently to signal restraint. Kaide rambles about mochi vendors, and you nod, steering the talk back to logistics. Joke 1. If Kaide's ideas were lanterns, the festival would blind the kami by midnight. The conversation shifts to a village issue. A merchant overcharging for rice. Mio suggests a collective bargain, and you back her, fanning agreement. Your voice calm but firm. You recall the ledger's clarity, your careful budgeting, and feel a flicker of confidence. This is your domain too. Yuki hints at a neighbor's debt, and you redirect, keeping the tone civil. Joke 2. If Yuki's gossip were currency, the village would never haggle again. The meeting hums along, your fan's flicks blending with the tea's steam, the rice crackers untouched as the night deepens. You wrap up, assigning tasks. Mio handles shrine offerings, Keita oversees vendors, and you'll finalize the lanterns. The wives leave, their chatter fading into the courtyard, and you tidy the room, stacking cups with the same care as your sewing stitches. The meeting was a success, your cranes holding their own against Yuki's flare. You think of the kamidana's rice, the bath's camellia, the poetry's moonlight. Each a thread in your day, now tied to this community's pulse. Correspondence awaits. But for now, you linger, the fan still in hand, its willow pattern a quiet victory in the lantern's glow. You step away from the receiving room, the faint clink of teacups still echoing in your mind, and move through the house, where the night has woven a deep quiet, the air cool with the scent of cedar and the hush of sleeping tatami. Moonlight seeps through a shoji screen, casting delicate silver threads across the floor, and a lone cricket's chirp hums in the distance. As a samurai wife, your duties extend to maintaining ties with distant family and allies, and now you're heading to a small alcove to write letters, a task that keeps your household connected across miles. It's less about chit-chat and more about preserving bonds, your ink and washi a bridge to the world beyond the village. You kneel at a low desk, its surface smooth under a single oil lamp, its flame dancing like a tiny star. Historical records from the Edo period note that samurai wives often handled correspondence, penning letters to relatives or clan members to share news, offer condolences, or request favors, their words chosen with care to uphold honor. You open a lacquered box, pulling out washi paper, an inkstone, and a bamboo brush, its tip worn but precise. You're writing to Taro's cousin in Kyoto, updating her on the harvest festival, and to a childhood friend in Osaka, whose recent letter mentioned a sick child. The ink smells sharp, grounding you as you grind it with a slow, circular motion. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives sealed their letters with a dab of camellia oil, believing it carried their goodwill to the recipient. You drip a tiny bead onto the wax seal, its faint floral scent mingling with the ink. Does it truly bless the letter, or is it just a fragrant flourish? Historians still argue whether this was a common practice or a poetic quirk of sentimental writers. But you like the idea of a scented wish, echoing that poem still tucked in your obi, a secret thread in your night's work. You begin with the Kyoto letter, your brush gliding across the washi, forming kanji with the same precision as your embroidery stitches. You describe the festival's crane lanterns, Kenji's kendo progress, and Aiko's love for umeboshi, keeping the tone warm but formal. You mentioned Taro's castle duties vaguely. Clan politics demand discretion. Joke 1. If you wrote as fast as Kei talks, this letter would reach Kyoto by dawn. You fold the paper, seal it with wax and that camellia touch, and set it aside, the act as deliberate as your tea ceremony whisk. Next, the Osaka letter. You soften your tone, offering sympathy for your friend's child and suggesting a rice bran poultice, a remedy your mother swore by. You share a light anecdote about Aiko's calligraphy smudges, hoping it lifts her spirits. The brush moves slower now, your hand tired but steady, each stroke a small act of care. You think of the Kamidana's rice offering, the festival's lanterns, the community meetings' fan flicks, each a thread in your day, now woven into these words. Joke 2. If your friend's worries were ink, you'd need a bigger inkstone to soothe them. You seal the second letter, the wax gleaming under the lamp's glow, and stack both in the box for Riku to deliver tomorrow. The house is silent, save for the faint creak of wood and the cricket's persistent hum. Your kimono feels heavier, the obi's weight tugging, but the letters are a quiet victory, tying your family to a wider world. Guest room prep is next, but for now, you linger, the brush still warm in your hand, its ink a final stroke in the day's endless, elegant dance, carrying you toward the night's next task. You step away from the alcove, the sharp scent of ink still clinging to your fingers, and glide through the house, where the night has deepened into a profound stillness, the air cool and heavy with the scent of cedar. Moonlight spills through a shoji screen, tracing faint silver veins across the tatami, and the distant chirp of a cricket hums like a quiet lullaby. As a samurai wife, your duties include preparing for unexpected guests, a common occurrence in a samurai household where clan members or messengers might arrive unannounced. You're heading to a spare room to arrange bedding and ensure it's ready for any late-night visitor, weaving hospitality into the fabric of your endless day. You enter the guest room, a small space with clean tatami and a single alcove holding a scroll of a mountain scene, its simplicity a nod to Edo restraint. Historical records from the Tokugawa period note that samurai wives maintained guest quarters to reflect the family's honor, with bedding and decor arranged to offer comfort without ostentation. You kneel by a lacquered chest, pulling out a stack of futons, their cotton stuffing soft but firm, and a pile of quilts dyed in muted indigo, each folded with the precision of your morning kimono ritual. The room smells faintly of straw and camphor, a grounding scent that steadies you. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives tucked a sprig of dried lavender under the guest pillow, believing it ensured restful sleep for travelers. You slip a small bundle into each pillowcase, its faint floral whiff mingling with the tatami's straw. Does it truly calm the weary, or is it just a fragrant superstition? Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or a regional habit of overly thoughtful hostesses, but you like the idea of a secret comfort, echoing that poem still nestled in your obi, a quiet thread in your night's work. You spread the futons, smoothing them flat, and layer quilts, ensuring warmth for a chilly night. You place a low wooden pillow at each head, its lacquer gleaming under the lantern's flicker, and set a folded hemp towel nearby for washing. The act feels like your embroidery or garden tending, deliberate, rhythmic, each choice shaping a moment of care. You recall Yuki's sharp gaze during the social call, her likely judgment of other wives' guest rooms, and smirk. Joke 1. If Yuki's gossip were bedding, her guests would sleep under a pile of rumors. You check the room's details, sliding open a shoji screen to let in a breath of night air, then closing it to keep the warmth. A small clay basin and a pitcher of water sit in the corner, ready for morning use, and you nudge a tatami mat back into alignment, its edge slightly frayed but passable. You think of the Kamadana's rice, the festival's lanterns, the letters Camellia seal, each a thread in your day, now woven into this room's quiet welcome. Joke 2. If your mother-in-law inspected guest rooms like she does miso soup, you'd be refolding quilts till dawn. You step back, surveying the space. It's simple but inviting, a balance of function and grace, ready for a weary samurai or a chatty cousin. The house is silent, save for the cricket's hum and the faint creak of wood under your step. Your kimono feels heavier, the obi's weight tugging, but the room is a small victory, a promise of hospitality. Journaling awaits, but for now, you linger. The lavenders scent a soft pulse in the air, carrying the calm of this moment into the night's next act. Your roll as steady as the tatami beneath your knees. You slip out of the guest room, the faint whiff of lavender trailing behind you, and move through the house, where the night has cloaked the tatami rooms in a deep, velvety hush. Moonlight seeps through a shoji screen, casting ghostly silver patterns on the cedar floor, and the soft chirp of a lone cricket weaves a delicate thread of sound. As a samurai wife, your day often ends with a moment of reflection, a chance to capture fleeting thoughts before they dissolve into sleep. You're heading to a small alcove to journal, your brush and washi a quiet space to unravel the day's rhythm, from rice to lanterns, and anchor yourself in the stillness. You kneel at a low desk, its surface worn smooth by countless nights like this, and light a single oil lamp, its flame flickering like a sleepy moth. Historical records from the Edo period note that some samurai wives kept diaries, recording household events, personal musings, or poetry to preserve their legacy or simply to process their lives. You open a bound book of washi, its pages filled with your flowing kanji, and dip a bamboo brush in ink, the sharp scent cutting through the cedar's warmth. Tonight, you'll write about the festival plans, Kenji's wobbly kanji, and that moment of calm in the garden, each thought a stitch in the day's tapestry. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives drew a tiny circle in their journal's margin, believing it sealed their words against prying eyes. You sketch one, a wobbly ring beside the date, its ink blooming faintly on the washi. Does it truly guard your thoughts, or is it just a hopeful quirk? Historians still argue whether this was a common practice or a private ritual of secretive writers, but you like its small defiance, echoing that poem still tucked in your obi, a secret pulse tying you to this moment. You begin, your brush gliding with the same precision as your embroidery needle, describing the crane lantern sketches and the community meetings fan flicks. You note Yuki's gossip, her sharp eyes missing the quiet strength of your role, and smile. Your words capture what her chatter never could. You write of Kenji's pride in his kendo stance, Aiko's smudged calligraphy, and the Kamadana's rice offering, each detail a thread from the day. Joke 1. If your journal were as messy as Aiko's kanji, you'd need a new book by sunrise. The ink flows, your hand steady despite the late hour, the lantern's glow softening the page. You pause, reflecting on the bath's camellia, the ledger's clarity, the poetry's moonlight, each a moment now preserved in these lines. You scribble a quick haiku about the garden's bonsai, its twisted branches like your day's endless tasks, and feel a flicker of calm. The house is silent, save for the cricket's hum and the faint creak of wood under a distant step, maybe Hana checking the kitchen. Joke 2. If your mother-in-law caught you journaling, she'd critique your kanji's slant by moonlight. You close with a line about Taro's tired smile at his return, a rare softness you carry into sleep. You blot the page, the washi drinking the ink, and tuck the brush away, the book left open to dry. The lantern's flame wavers, its oil nearly spent, and your kimono feels heavier, the obi's weight tugging as always. Journaling is a quiet rebellion, a space where you're more than rice and rituals. Etiquette practice awaits, but for now, you linger. The circle in the margin, a small guardian of your thoughts, carrying the day's clarity into the night's final tasks. Your role as steady as the tatami beneath your knees. You ease away from the alcove, the faint scent of ink and washi lingering on your fingers, and glide through the house, where the night has woven a profound stillness, the air cool and heavy with the scent of cedar. Moonlight spills through a shoji screen, tracing delicate silver veins across the tatami, and a lone cricket's chirp hums softly in the distance. As a samurai wife, your day includes moments of refining your own grace, ensuring your manners uphold the household's honor. You're heading to a small room to practice etiquette, rehearsing gestures and phrases to maintain your poise in the rigid world of Edo society. It's less about vanity and more about mastery, a quiet discipline to keep your role seamless. You kneel in a sparse room, its tatami clean and unadorned, a single lantern casting a warm glow on a low table. Historical records from the Edo period note that samurai wives studied etiquette, from bowing to conversational nuance, to navigate social and clan interactions with flawless decorum. You set out a silk fan, your willow-painted one from the community meeting, and a small mirror, its bronze surface worn but clear. You practice first with the fan, opening it with a soft flick, your wrist turning in a smooth arc, each motion as deliberate as your tea ceremony whisk. The air stirs, cool against your face, and you feel the rhythm settle in. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives practiced bowing to a straw doll, believing it honed their precision without judgment. You glance at Aiko's straw doll, borrowed from her futon, propped against the table, and give it a playful nod. Does it really sharpen your form, or is it just a whimsical stand-in? Historians still argue whether this was a common practice or a lighthearted quirk of private training, but you like the doll's silent approval, echoing that poem still tucked in your obi, a secret thread grounding your focus. You bow to it, your kimono rustling, your forehead nearly brushing the tatami, and rise smoothly, checking your reflection for any slip in posture. You move to conversational phrases, reciting polite greetings for a daimyo's wife or clan elder. May your house prosper under heaven's grace. Your voice is low, almost a whisper, paced to lull as much as impress. You recall the community meeting, your fan's subtle flicks steering Yuki's chatter, and practice a deflection for gossip. Such matters fade like autumn leaves. Joke 1. If you deflected Cade's rants this well, you'd deserve a shrine of your own. You repeat the phrase, softening its edges, ensuring it flows like the poetry you read earlier, each word a brushstroke in your verbal art. You shift to serving gestures, mimicking the act of pouring tea, your hands steady as they trace the motions from your social call. You imagine Yuki's sharp eyes, your mother-in-law's frown, and keep your movements fluid, the fan now closed, a prop for balance. The room feels still, the only sound the fan's faint snap and the cricket's distant hum. You think of the kamedana's rice, the ledger's clarity, the journal's haiku, each a thread in your day, now woven into this practice of grace. Joke 2. If etiquette were a katana, you'd be slicing through awkward silences by now. You finish with a final bow, deeper this time. The straw doll your silent witness. The mirror shows a woman poised but tired, the kimono's weight tugging as always. Etiquette is your armor, polished through repetition, ready for the next social battlefield. The house's final checks await, but for now, you linger. The fan still in hand, its willow pattern a quiet reminder of your strength. You rise, the tatami firm beneath your knees, carrying this moment's calm into the night's last tasks. Your role as steady as the lantern's fading glow. You step out of the etiquette room, the soft snap of your fan still echoing in your mind, and glide through the house, where the night has settled into a deep, enveloping quiet, the air cool and scented with the faint musk of cedar. Moonlight filters through a shoji screen, casting silvery wisps across the tatami, and the distant chirp of a cricket hums like a gentle pulse. As a samurai wife, Your day closes with a final sweep of the household, ensuring safety and order before you surrender to sleep. You're checking doors, lanterns, and the kitchen's embers, tying up the day's loose ends with the same care you gave to your embroidery or tea ceremony. It's less about chores and more about sealing the house in peace. You begin in the main hall, where the oil lamp from Taro's return has burned low, its flame a faint flicker. Historical records from the Edo period note that samurai wives performed nightly checks to prevent fires, a constant risk in wooden houses, and to maintain the household's harmony. You pinch out the lamp's wick, the smoky scent sharp, and slide the shoji screen shut, their wooden frames whispering against their tracks. You test the front door, its cedar bolt sliding firmly into place, and feel the house settle, as if it's exhaling with you. The silence is profound, broken only by the creak of a floorboard under your step. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives sprinkled a pinch of rice at the threshold during their final check, believing it warded off restless spirits. You scatter a few grains from a small pouch, their pale dots glinting in the moonlight. Does it truly keep ghosts at bay, or is it just a soothing ritual? Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or a superstitious quirk of cautious households, but you like its quiet symbolism, echoing that poem still tucked in your obi, a secret charm woven into the night's end. You smile, thinking of the Kamidana's rice offering, a thread connecting this act to your earlier prayers. You move to the kitchen, where the clay stove's embers glow faintly, like sleepy fireflies. You rake them with an iron rod, ensuring no stray spark lingers, and cover the stove with a clay lid. Hana's pots are scrubbed, stacked neatly, and you nod approval. Her work's improved since the oversalted miso days. You check the water bucket, its surface still, and secure the back door, its latch firm. Joke 1. If you locked doors as tightly as your mother-in-law locks her opinions, no thief would dare try. The kitchen feels like a small fortress, its order a testament to your day's efforts. You glide through the corridors, pausing at the kids' room, where Kenji and Aiko sleep, Aiko's straw doll tucked under her arm. You adjust Kenji's quilt, his soft snores a quiet reassurance, and feel a flicker of warmth, like sipping that test bowl of matcha hours ago. You check Taro's room, his futon empty. He's likely asleep in his study, lost in some clan report. The guest room's futons, prepped earlier, wait untouched, their lavender sprigs of faint promise. You think of the ledger's clarity, the festival's lanterns, the journal's haiku, each a thread in your day, now knotted in this final sweep. Joke 2. If checking the house were a kendo match, you'd be the shogun of safety by now. You return to the main hall satisfied, the house as secure as your obi's knot. The moonlight feels softer now, the crickets chirp fainter, and your kimono's weight tugs heavier, urging you toward rest. Bedtime is next, but for now, you linger. The rice grains at the threshold, a small guardian of your peace, carrying the day's rhythm into the night's final act, your role as steady as the tatami beneath your knees. You step away from the main hall, the faint scatter of rice grains at the threshold lingering in your thoughts, and glide toward your private room, where the night has woven a profound stillness, the air cool and heavy with the scent of cedar and straw. Moonlight seeps through a shoji screen, casting delicate silver threads across the tatami, and the distant chirp of a cricket fades into a soft, lulling hum. As a samurai wife, your day ends with slipping into sleep, a ritual of unwinding that mirrors the care you've poured into every task, from rice to lanterns, from prayers to poetry. You're preparing your futon, shedding the day's weight, and letting the house's quiet carry you into dreams of tomorrow. You kneel beside your futon, its cotton stuffing molded to your shape from countless nights, and unfold it with the same precision you used to fold your kimono this morning. Historical records from the Edo period note that samurai wives often ended their days with simple bedtime routines, prioritizing rest to sustain their demanding roles. You smooth the quilt, dyed a soft indigo with a faint crane pattern, and place a wooden pillow, its lacquer cool under your palm. You loosen your obi, the poem slipping free at last, and tuck it into a lacquered box. its words a final note in the day's symphony. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some samurai wives slept with a small stone under their pillow, believing it grounded their dreams to the earth. You place a smooth river pebble, polished by years of handling, beneath your pillow's edge. Does it truly shape your sleep, or is it just a comforting ritual? Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or a private quirk of restless sleepers, but you like its quiet weight, a last echo of the garden's bonsai or the kamidana's rice. You smile, thinking of Aiko's straw doll, another talisman of rest, and feel the house settle around you. You slip out of your kimono, folding it with care, and don a lightweight yukata. It's cotton soft against your skin. The act feels like shedding the day, rice checks, tea ceremonies, Yuki's gossip, Taro's tired smile. You recall each thread, the ledger's clarity, the bath's camellia, the journal's haiku, the etiquette fan's flick. Joke 1. If your day were a kimono, it'd have more layers than your mother-in-law's critiques. You slide under the quilt, the futon firm but welcoming, and adjust the pebble, its coolness a faint anchor. The room is silent, save for the cricket's fading hum and the faint creak of wood as the house breathes. You close your eyes, the moonlight's glow softening behind your lids, and let your thoughts drift. You picture the festival's lanterns, their crane motifs glowing under a starlit sky, Kenji's kanji steadying, Aiko's laughter over umeboshi. The day's rhythm, rice, stitches, prayers, ink, fades into a gentle pulse, like the poem you carried all day. Joke 2, if sleep were a task, you'd master it faster than Kenji sneaks pickles. The pebble presses lightly, the quilt's warmth wraps you, and you feel the house is quiet, a guardian as steady as your own heartbeat, carrying you toward dreams. Now, let the day slip away, soft as moonlight on tatami. Picture yourself in that quiet room, the futon cradling you, the air cool and still. The house is at rest, its cedar beams holding the weight of your care. Every bowl of rice, every stitched crane, every whispered prayer. The cricket's hum fades, blending with your breath, slow and even, like waves lapping a distant shore. You're not just a samurai wife, you're the heart of this world, and it's time to feel the quilt's warmth, the pebble's grounding touch, and let your thoughts dissolve into a gentle haze. The festival lanterns glow in your mind, their light soft, flickering, guiding you deeper. Tomorrow waits, but for now, there's only this moment, this breath, this drift into peace. Sleep calls, wrapping you in its quiet embrace, and you surrender, the night a whisper of dreams. Sweet dreams.